Well, this is why I say the pain is a wake-up call, and it's actually a friend. Disease is a message, and it's waking you up to get you back actually in alignment with what's best for you. The conventional way of looking at pain is let's figure out what medication will suppress it. That's not going to get to the root ever. Just like your example, and I have millions of the same examples. Why is nothing working? Why do I still hurt? That's when you really know this is not physical. This is mental and emotional habits. They got imprinted early on, and we can change this and not have to cut it out or drug it out.
Welcome, Debora Wayne, to another episode of You Must Be Out of Your Mind. And as everybody knows, I always bring on great guests that sort of fit in with what we do. So I'm excited to have you here, Deborah, and welcome to You Must Be Out of Your Mind.
Thank you so much. This is the perfect place for me because I know I'm out of my mind.
Awesome. There you go. That's what I'm looking for. People out of their mind. We got to get people out of the way their mind is operating right now because it's causing a lot of issues. And my experience has been it's coming in from a lot of trauma. But I'm really fascinated to hear about how you started and what the genesis is for you and getting into this because you're definitely a pioneer in this area.
Well, I'll take you back to the pivotal moment. It was a traumatic moment that changed my life. And it's over 30 years ago now, but I woke up one morning lying on the floor of my big, beautiful walk-in closet, and I couldn't stop crying. I could not shut my head up. I was in so much pain, physical, mental, emotional pain. And I was out of the ability that day to fake it till you make it again. I couldn't get dressed. I couldn't go to work. And I just was lying on the floor crying and thinking about how I could end my life. And I screamed out to the universe, to a God I did not believe in at the time. And I said, if there's anything out there, please help me. And I had a massive transformative spiritual experience that I wasn't expecting. And within seconds, my closet was filled with this very palpable, huge energy of love. And a peace came over me and inside of me. And I stopped crying immediately. I knew, somehow I just knew everything was going to be okay. I started to hear an inner voice saying, you have work to do, but you're going to heal, and then you're going to help other people heal. And at first, I have to admit, there was part of me going, oh, I'm losing it. But there was another part of me that knew this was absolutely, I could feel the change already happening. Yep. And from that day on, it's a long story, but the short version is I unpacked my life. I got out of my mind, literally. I had to take everything out and lie it all out and make a lot of changes and start examining my thoughts, my emotions, all the choices I had made, and I had to throw most of them out. I started meditating, and I had a series of these spiritual experiences that revealed to me all the principles that I now know are based on quantum physics. But I didn't know that then, but I was shown how this universal life force energy is everywhere present, and it's loving, and it's deep peace, and it's inside of each and every one of us, and it can be used for healing. And that's how my journey began. I never looked back. My career changed, my home changed, my husband changed, my clothing changed, everything.
You threw out a lot.
A lot. I threw out, I mean it, I threw
everything.
Out, yeah. My mind, I was out of my mind. Every choice I had made was based on the wrong motivation for a long time. And I had to get right with myself and get real with myself. And it turned the whole boat around. And I've never looked back, and I've been able to help literally hundreds of thousands of people since then in 160 countries. And I would never have dreamed any of this was possible.
So you had trauma that you had earlier in your life. Is that where it was coming from?
Yes, I had a mixture of a misunderstanding, low self-esteem, a fear of really stepping into my power. Came from a beautiful family, but very overachieving and very critical. And I was the scapegoat in the family, so I was the problem. I was always the problem. And I knew at a very young age what I wanted, what I liked, what I wanted to do when I grow up. I knew very clearly. And I was always told, nope, you don't want to do that. No, you shouldn't feel that way. No, you can't go there. So it beat me up. And after a while, I kind of gave up, and I just started trying to be who you wanted me to be. And right. I've discovered people pleasing literally will kill someone. It can kill someone. And I practiced that for too long. And there were other issues as well that were borderline and abusive. And over time, it just wore me out and I lost myself. And in order to also try to live with the internal conflict, I started drinking and taking drugs to relieve the conflict. And
Hmm.
as we know, it doesn't relieve anything. It's a temporary
Numbs it. Yeah.
tending, a numbing, a suppressing. And I tried to go over and around the real core issues that I needed to face head on. And that's what led me to the closet crisis.
So
Yeah.
I'm sure you see a lot of people, fairly similar stories, right? Coming in from trauma.
100%. Yeah. I've worked with people from all over the world, all different cultures, but the same traumas in a different body, in a different country, in a different disguise. But yes, I've seen thousands and thousands of people with trauma of some type, and that unresolved, and particularly emotional conflict and the conflicting beliefs, they show up in the body. They show up as physical pain and disease symptoms. The body is the reflection of the mind and the emotions.
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing that I found as well. So I meet a lot of different people. I have one that's interesting. I think you probably find fascinating. A woman who was a sponsor in AANA, and one of the people that she sponsored, he had been on an addiction for 7 years with heroin, got her off of that, and she was so blown away. She said, I'm sober, but I had a lot of trauma as a child, and that still is bothering me. So she came through the program. We cleared up her trauma. 3 years later, just to go to where I'm going with this story, is she injured her wrist. They put her on pain medication and she literally fell apart. And
Over and over and over
yeah,
again.
so she wanted to commit suicide. They put her in the hospital. They put her on drugs. Nothing helped. She came home. She said to her husband, I don't know what this is. It's a darkness. They sent her in again. They changed all her meds. She came home and she says it's no better. And he said, well, why don't you call Dr. Wood? Because I remember a few years ago when you went to him, that helped. She goes, but this is different. She goes, this is not my trauma. She goes, I can think about my trauma now, think about all the things that happened to me. I don't know what this is. It's a darkness that I can't understand. I can't get out of. So she came in to see me and I said to her, bring in your husband because I'd rather you not be driving on your own if that's the way you're thinking. So she comes in and I said to her, so tell me what you're angry about. And she goes, well, no, I'm depressed. I'm not angry. And I said, yeah, depression's anger.
Mhm.
And she looked right at her husband and I
Uh,
went, oh no. I
Here we
just brought
go.
him in. So he didn't pick up on it. So I said, why don't you go grab a coffee and let us talk for a little bit? And when he left, she goes, oh my God, it's him. And so she said, like, he's not a bad man. It's not like he's physical or beats me or anything like that. He's a good man. I love my husband. She says, but he makes me feel guilty about everything. The house isn't clean. I haven't got this ready on time. It's like guilt, guilt, guilt. And I said to her, is he Catholic? She goes, well, yeah, what does that have to do with it? And I said, he learned that behavior. He learned how to get what he wants by using guilt. The problem was just she was so nice and she didn't want the conflict. So when she got on the pain medication,
Yeah.
her mind basically said fight or shut down.
Yeah.
And she shut down. And so, but once we addressed what it was and we brought him back in and he was like, oh my God, he goes, I'm the problem. I didn't realize it. She's right. I do know I do that because, but my mother did it to me. And so that was how he got what he wanted.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't deliberately trying to hurt her. And in her mind, she couldn't fight back. So
Right.
she just suppressed it. But when she got on the medication, her mind was just like, no, you got to fight. And it wouldn't let her.
This is just such a great example. We get stuck in these patterns of behaving and thinking and emotional patterns because we learned them. They were literally put into the hard drive and we think it's normal. It becomes our normal. And
Mhm.
no one teaches us to take this out and examine the way we think, the way we feel, and to break these family codes in particular of always being nice or always being critical. It feels like normal because you got
Mhm.
imprinted that way. It's destructive. And thank goodness you had asked him to drive that day because that was perfect too. Thank goodness that he was open to looking at himself. Not everyone is, and that's a problem. That pride and ego can get in there. But when we're just willing to look at the truth and then say, oh, am I willing to change this or not? Everything can change like that.
And it's just identifying it and getting to the root cause. And I say the same thing. Our brains are just computers and they code. And I said, what's interesting is if I type into my computer, My computer's never going to tell me to stop typing.
That's right.
It will just let me keep on typing, so I can code whatever I want to type in there. And
Yeah.
that especially happens very early, and a child doesn't know that this is coding that they don't want, so they just accept the code the same way any computer would.
Well, this is why I say the pain is a wake-up call, and it's actually a friend. Disease is a message, and it's waking you up to get you back actually in alignment with what's best for you. The conventional way of looking at pain is, well, let's figure out what medication will suppress it. That's not going to get to the root ever, just like your example, and I have millions of the same examples. Why is nothing working? Why do I still hurt? I actually wrote a book with that title for this reason, because that's when you really know this is not physical. This is mental and emotional habits. They got imprinted early on, and we can change this and not have to cut it out or drug it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
I wrote my second book. I called it Emotional Concussions.
That's perfect.
Because it's like an emotional concussion, but concussions heal if you treat them right.
Exactly.
And that's sort of what it, because they're not always the big T traumas. I've worked with Boston Marathon bombing survivors and Vegas shooting, big traumas. But a lot of people go, "Oh, I don't really have trauma," and then it shows up somewhere, though.
Absolutely. And the definition of trauma has changed. Years ago, we thought trauma meant you were in war somewhere. And really today, there's trauma everywhere. Even just driving on the freeway in California it can be very traumatic for people. But we're living in such a high-paced, high-pressure world, and it's very difficult for people to integrate how fast all the information is coming at them. And especially because of what we're talking about, because you've been programmed since childhood to behave and think a certain way, and you haven't adapted and haven't had the upgrade. It's like if you don't update your iPhone, it doesn't function as well. Well, we have to update our physiology and our mind and our emotions.
Yep. And what I always talk about is if you have unresolved trauma, the system isn't doing maintenance. So it's doing minimal maintenance. I just published a study right now because I'm doing testing that when we have this unresolved trauma, the genes that regulate inflammation upregulate, the genes that regulate the immune system downregulate, along with neuroplasticity. So now you've got the perfect recipe for disease, high inflammation, low immunity. And then we wonder why these people are getting sick. Well, they don't have the power for maintenance. So then the system gets overwhelmed. And the idea is that once we resolve the trauma, and this is what I'm showing in the pre and post DNA, that we're actually changing it and inflammation's coming down and immunity's coming up, along with neuroplasticity.
Love it. Love it. I mean, so many women in particular, like the example you shared, are programmed very early on not to express, especially anger. It's just too big, too powerful. Keep it in. Pretend everything's fine. And then clients constantly asking me, why do I have inflammation? What emotion are you not wanting to feel? What emotion do you avoid, walk around, go over, under, pretend isn't there? And it's often the anger. And we know that this is affecting our physical health. Like you said, the studies show it. I mean, you look at the ACE studies, you look at a lot of different things now that really are finally connecting the mind, body, emotion. And these emotions are so potent, and they're emitting frequencies, and they're affecting our nervous system and our immune system 24/7. Many people are not in touch with their emotions. That was my story as well. By the end, I had shut down so much of my authentic self that I was not aware of how I felt anymore. I was just looking for how you wanted me to react, how you wanted me to feel. So I had lost touch with that, and that's what had to come back online.
Yeah, and that's what I talk about too, is I say, anytime you have an emotion, a feeling, or a sensation, your mind is calling for an action. What's the purpose of fear? Escape. What's the purpose of anger? Attack. The problem is it may be dealing with a glitch, multi-intelligence, old data that it's saying fight back, right? Protect yourself, but you can't do it because it doesn't exist. But the emotion keeps coming. And so what do? We numb it, we ignore it, we manage it. And I'm saying, let's find what the emotion is calling for. And chances are it's something you don't need to do anything about. I was speaking in Phoenix back in December, and they asked me to come in and talk about anxiety. And I said, think of anxiety as an email. It keeps coming into your inbox, right? You keep ignoring it, or you put an antivirus software to stop the emails from coming in. But it's a message from your bank saying, we suspect there's suspicious activity on your account. Check it out, right? So what do? You ignore it. Well, the bank's not going to keep ignoring it. It's going to keep sending you the message. It wants an answer. Is there a problem or not? And once you then address it and you say, well, no, that's old activity. I've already addressed that. Or, oh, yes, this is something that I need to address. Either one. But if you keep ignoring it, it's never going to stop. And then we're going to put you on antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications, which make no sense.
That's a great metaphor, though. That's exactly what happens. And people are not taught that the body is a feedback machine. And instead of freaking out and looking for every car part that could be broken to fix or to numb out, we need to just recognize all the messages we're constantly being given to get back on the right track from the feedback. It's a beautiful mechanism that's working in our favor.
Well, even inflammation, I talk about inflammation is a cell danger response, is trying to protect the system. So inflammation's not the problem. It's chronic inflammation that's the problem when it stays on. So what we need to do is address it. So that inflammation is a way to protect the system while it's under attack. And so once we resolve it and we end the attack, then the inflammation goes away. It's when it stays on because the trauma is not resolved. So as far as your mind's concerned, it still needs to stay in this cell danger response, which is what my daughter had. She had Crohn's and then a second autoimmune called idiopathic pulmonary hemosiderosis. They told us no cure for either one of them. They don't even know what causes them. And so they're going to have to manage it. So they took out 24 inches of her intestines and literally had her on steroids constantly, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications. And all it was trauma that we didn't know about when she was between 6 and 8. We resolved the trauma, no more Crohn's, no more lung disorder.
Wow.
That simple.
Exactly what I find.
Yeah.
It's where we have to look. And it's why I'm a broken record saying we're looking in the wrong place to solve the problem.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful example. Yeah, exactly. We have to get to the root, and the symptoms are never the root of the problem.
No, they're just symptoms. So when people come in and say to me, I have post-traumatic stress, I'll just say, well, that's a symptom, right? Your mind is looking at old data in real time.
Exactly.
And it thinks you're under attack. So we just have to reboot the system and make the system understand that you're safe. And then it starts going back into maintenance.
100% agree. That's what I find. Yeah, it's quite remarkable how people and how quickly the body will heal and the mind will calm down and the emotions quiet down when we get down to that root, and help people not be afraid to feel the feelings and go back into what the mind wants to bring up, instead of trying so hard to resist all of that, that it actually gets stuck and gets worse.
So a lot of times what I found is because of the old trauma, it keeps running it in real time, calling for an action that isn't possible. So we just have to reboot the system.
Yeah. Scaring people about a danger that's just not actually present. It's old. And because they've never released the emotion and resolved the emotions from the original experience, it still feels like it's in real time. And they're trying to resolve it now, but it's long gone. So nothing makes any sense. They feel kind of crazy making, spinning. The mind doesn't calm down, and it has to be dealt with in real time, but it's old. It's ancient history.
Problem is if you don't know that, what you do is you went out drinking last night, or when I took that drug, I felt better. And then, so now you're starting to build a new code, and your mind is literal. It doesn't know what is good, bad, right, or wrong. It's literal. So that stopped the pain. And what I always talk about is, when does your mind want the pain to stop? Now. And so if I take that drug and it stopped the pain now, I solved the problem. But now I'm building a code up that this is the resource to stop the pain. And then we wonder why these people can't stop. So we shame them and think, well, we're going to shame them into changing that behavior, when that behavior was the thing that helped them. It's not a good thing. So the lady I told you about who had the thing with the guilt, the lady she had sent in was 7 years on heroin. And the first thing she did when she sat down with me, she said, I told my therapist I was coming in to see you, and he told me to make sure and be honest with you and tell you up front I have self-destructive behavior. And so I smiled at her. I said, really? What would make you think you're self-destructive? And she looked at me like, well, I'm sticking a needle in my arm with heroin. You don't think that's self-destructive? I said, no, I think you're trying to feel better. And I bet you when you stuck the needle in your arm, you felt better. She goes, well, yeah. I says, the substance is destructive, not you.
Yes, beautiful distinction. That is unfortunately what happens along the trail of addiction. It turns into this moral issue,
Mhm.
and it's not a moral issue. And people confuse themselves with the behavior and with the addiction. And just like you said, it solves the problem temporarily.
Yeah.
It- It's not a good person, bad person issue.
No. And I was at a conference and this guy said to me, he goes, well, they just really make bad choices. Don't you just write it off as bad choices? And I said, okay, let's talk about choices for a second. And he was wearing jeans and a blue t-shirt. And I said, did you choose to wear that t-shirt today? And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, tell me how you chose it. He says, well, I saw my jeans and I thought I'm going to wear my jeans. And I saw the blue t-shirt and I thought the blue t-shirt looks good with the jeans. I said, so you chose the blue t-shirt? And he
Mhm.
goes, right. And I said, why didn't you choose the pink polka dot t-shirt? And he goes, well, I don't have a pink polka dot t-shirt. And I said, well, I still think you should have chosen it anyway. I'm going to judge you that you didn't choose what I thought you should have chose. And I said, is that fair? And I said, so let me tell you how the addict is thinking. I have two t-shirts in my closet, a black one and a white one. If I wear the black one, I'm in pain. If I wear the white one, I'm not in pain. So they only have two t-shirts to choose from, and you want to judge them on it. Do I want to be in pain or not be in pain? They
Right.
can't see, they don't have the other t-shirts. They have two. And he goes, I never thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great metaphor as well, and so, so true. I mean, I do believe at the core, no matter how crazy it looks to someone else, everyone is doing the best they can to try to be on, a happier track. We know deep down we were here to experience life, and it should feel better than it does many times. And so people are just trying to reach for something that works, that gets them a result. And
Yeah.
they use whatever tools in the toolbox. And if all they have is a hammer, they're going to use the hammer until it doesn't work, or they're so beaten up by the hammer, they'll finally scream, somebody, do you have another tool? So every
Yeah.
drop of pain will get you closer to getting to the right track.
Yeah.
That,
It's the same thing too. I'll say to people, if you go to the dentist with a toothache
yeah,
and the dentist puts in a needle and numbs it and says, how does it feel? And you say, actually, it's pretty good. I don't feel the pain right now. Okay, perfect. Right. And then the next day you're back, say, my tooth's still aching. I'll give you more Novocaine. Are you going to keep going back to the dentist? You will, because
yeah,
they stopped the pain. They
yeah.
haven't fixed the problem, but you'll keep going back. And then we want to then look at you and say, well, you're not solving the problem. Keep going back to the drug dealer.
That's right. That's right. And that's why you see the trail of addiction in particular. It goes on and on and on until the drug turns on the person and it no longer gives the relief. It just becomes a nightmare. And unfortunately, it often takes a long time to crash and burn. You can't logic and reason with someone who's feeling better.
Right.
That's the only tool in their toolbox.
We have to start taking the shame and guilt out of it. And
Uh,
that's what I do. And so when I work with people, I had a young lady in, and we took her through our program. And at the end of it, I said, so here's the new language I want you to use. I said, if somebody says to you, I understand you're an addict, you
mhm,
say, I experience symptoms of addiction.
mhm.
However, I've recovered. You're not in recovery anymore. You recovered. And I said, because you don't have to white knuckle this every day. When you've resolved it and you've now updated the code,
Yeah,
right? You've updated the code. Why would you have to continue to feel like you have to fight this every day? You
yeah.
don't. You resolved the trauma, which was the source and the code, and then you built a code to solve the pain.
I have a unique way of working in the energy field, which does exactly the same as you're describing. It actually literally removes the root cause and energetically balances the field. And the field is what informs the body. And I've worked with heroin addicts and other addicts and seen them just clean up overnight. And people say, well, that's impossible. It has to take a long time and it has to be, this horrible, hard journey. But it's exactly what you just said. When you remove the root and it is gone, it is out of your field, it ceases to exist. And so the
Right.
problem ceases to exist. It's either there or it's not there.
So I'd love to hear more about what you do. So can you explain what happens when somebody comes in?
I call it the high speed healing approach. My program is actually called the Pain Free Living Program. But the high speed healing approach is a three-pronged system where we look at the false beliefs that were imprinted in childhood. We learn to examine them, flip them, delete the false beliefs and reprogram, rewire the brain with new ideas that actually serve your highest and best good. Also, I teach people how to lose the fear of their emotions. I teach them several different self-care techniques. All these emotions that want to come up, which are made of energy, all they are is energy, and we've given them such power. And so I teach people how to allow them to come up and release. And again, it's very rapid that this experience of trying to stuff and deny and suppress and repress and drug out the emotions become your best friend, and they release in seconds. And I've watched people just transform overnight as a result of learning this. The third area, which is my favorite and kind of my superpower, is I'm able to work on people's energy field at a distance, doesn't matter where they live, anywhere in the world. And I can literally scan their field, whether in a group setting or individually, like an MRI scans the field and finds where the disturbances are. And I'm able to bring in healing frequencies that are literally present in our cosmos. And these frequencies harmonize the energy field, like tuning up a guitar that is, it's not broken. We don't need to throw it out. We need to tune up the strings. And we're all interconnected through this energy field. So when I work on people, the energy field changes. The field talks literally to the cells of the body. We are a mind, emotion, body complex. So it's working simultaneously to release typically these childhood imprints that are still showing up in the present. And people have magnificent healing, often instantaneous. Sometimes it's a little bit slower, but even slow in my world it's why we call it high speed healing, because it's so much more rapid than the old school talk therapy where you can't even find the root. You could be talking about it for 10 years and often you can't even remember how someone said something to you at a very young age or did something, and it can take a nanosecond to imprint and have a very traumatic effect. And you may not ever remember it. Even if you're looking, and talking about it and analyzing your childhood, you may not find it, but it's in your energy field.
Yeah.
And oftenly rapidly change very, very quickly.
No, I love that. And what I do is when I talk to people, I tell them, I don't even need to know what your trauma is. I worked with a U.S. Army sniper. He had to shoot and kill a 12-year-old. Now I knew the story, right? But then when he came in, he said to me, he says, I can't talk about this anymore. And he said, I got arrested at the VA. I started throwing tables and chairs because they keep asking me to talk about it in every session. And I said, well, I don't need you to talk about it. And he goes, well, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to fix it. And he goes, well, how are we going to fix it if I don't talk about it? And I said, I'll show you. By the time I was finished, he gave me a complete description without shaking and crying. He goes, how did you do that? And I said, I didn't do anything. I said, for 8 years, your mind's been trying to get you not to pull the trigger. It's been trying to stop you from what was your trauma. So I said, but you can't not shoot now. But your mind just got the update because your mind was trying to stop you because it thought you were shooting now. It's a glitch, just a glitch.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear some of the exciting things. And I'm sure you've had so many great healings. So do you have anything that would be good to share?
Yeah, such a wide range, but some of my favorite clients have been given the label fibromyalgia and arthritis, and they're told, if you Google it, there is no cure. And so, you're going to have to learn to live with this, cope with it, manage it, just like you here. And I went into a science lab with a woman who had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, arthritis, chronic fatigue syndrome, and insomnia. She hadn't slept in about a decade without pills. She had a spinal curvature that was causing a lot of pain, double cataracts, damage to an eardrum from an explosion. I mean, her list was long. In less than 40 minutes without talking, I didn't know what her conditions were. I was able to just work in her field, and measurable results of 67% decrease in all of the pain, all the symptoms, including emotional. And she said, oh no, the equipment's not correct. Pain free. And we followed her for a couple of months. And within 2 weeks, She had to pull off the road driving because she thought her glasses had fogged up. She took her glasses off to clean them, looked up and discovered 20/20 vision, cataracts healed, eardrum healed. Her physical therapist said, I don't know what you did, but your spine is perfectly straight. So we saw change on the physical, the mental, the emotional. She slept without sleep aids. She was
Mm.
able to travel again, work again, play with her kids or grandkids. I mean, this is what's possible. I've seen it many, many times with just such an extreme range. The digestive issues are another I'm sure you see this, the gut health. So many people have come to me. One dramatic case that always comes to mind is this poor woman could not stop. She had either was throwing up or had diarrhea every 10 minutes. She could not leave the house. This had gone on for 90 days. She went to every specialist. Nothing showed up on a medical test. They had no
Right.
clue what to do with her. It
Yep.
was all emotions. It was all unresolved emotions. When I sat down with her, worked on her one time, and the tears started coming, and she started becoming aware from within herself of the hurts that she was carrying from a lot of the experiences with her friends that she was too nice to talk about and to confront. And
Mhm.
all of this came out. We cleared it from her energy field. I gave her some skills that she could go back and she could repair these relationships or delete the ones that were not working for her. And of course, she became a raving fan because she never threw up again. She was able to go
Right.
to the gym and travel, and, her life came back. One of my other favorites, and I've had quite a few people who have come with cancer over the years. This poor woman, it was her second round of cancer. It was stage 4 and so far gone that the doctor said, we have nothing to offer you. We're not offering you chemo, radiation, drugs. You're just going to die. And she wasn't able to eat. She wasn't sleeping, filled with worry, tumors everywhere. Again, she was someone I went into a science lab with, and I didn't know her story or her condition until I worked on her only once a week for 3 weeks. And everything was measured and monitored and videoed. And at the end of the 3 weeks, I found out what she had. But they did an MRI the day after I finished working on her, and there was an 87% reduction in all tumors. And within a month, her doctor declared her cancer free. Yeah. And she was 72. She was not a spring chicken, but she told me afterwards, she knew in the second session, she knew that she had been healed. And she also, interestingly enough, she said, I now know what the root cause was. Her husband, who died 15 years ago, appeared to her internally, and she remembered how angry she was at some of the things he had said and done. And she said, I made peace with him. I spoke my mind. He apologized. We made amends. And I knew I was going to be free and I was going to be cancer free. And that is exactly what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've just seen such remarkable healing done. People would say is impossible, but it's only impossible because they're just looking at a purely physical body. And that is not where the problem lies, as we've been talking about. Yeah.
Yep. And the mind and body are designed to heal.
They're designed to heal. Yes. And everything is possible when you get this, that energy never dies. It can change form, and it often does, just like that. And if you get in a safe space with someone who knows this, who can give you the tools and help you all the way through it, not trying to avoid it, everything's designed to heal.
And that's what I talk about as well. As the key is I've got to get the mind into optimal condition to heal.
Yes.
Because if I just sat with somebody in the first few minutes and said, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this, the mind's going to resist because it doesn't feel safe.
Yes.
So you have to create the safety. So that's why I use a 4-hour program, because by the time we're 2 hours into it, they're completely ready for restoration. And then it just works. So I worked with a gentleman and he had the aura ring, and we videotaped his whole session. He was going to put on his YouTube channel. But what he said to me, he goes, I don't really have trauma. He says, so I don't know if I'll be a great subject for you. He says, but we'll record it and show it anyway. And so he says, my aura ring tells me I'm stressed. And he goes, but I don't feel stressed. And if you'd met him, he doesn't seem like a stressful guy. So it's always showing that he's in a stress mode. So he says either the aura ring is wrong or I don't know what stress is. So 2 hours into the session, we had taken a quick little break and he came back. He goes, I just checked my aura ring. He goes, what are you doing? It says I'm in restore state now. He
Yes.
goes, we haven't talked about any trauma yet. And I
Mm,
said, that's the whole idea is we're getting the mind ready to
mm,
then start dealing with the trauma. When it feels safe, it'll clear it for you, but it's
totally.
going to resist that change until it feels safe.
Yeah.
And so it's designed to do that.
Love that. I find the same thing, that that resistance must come up
Mhm.
and you have to have a safe container.
I'd like to hear about what you're doing in measuring, but we have this scan that we do, and it showed he had high cholesterol.
Mm,
And so he said to me, how do you know I have high cholesterol? He says, you didn't take any blood. I said, well, cholesterol is a frequency. So your LDL cholesterol was high.
mhm.
He goes, but you did that without blood. And I said, yeah, it's just a measurement. I can't tell you exactly what it is. I just know it's high. So we finished going through the session and it shows his LDL cholesterol now is back in balance. And so he goes, now that doesn't make any sense to me. He says, you're telling me my cholesterol changed in 4 hours. I said, yes. He goes, how? And
Yeah.
I said, that LDL cholesterol, everybody says is bad. It's not bad. That LDL cholesterol is synthesized by the liver into bile salts to flush the intestines. It's a maintenance tool. I
Mm,
said, but because you're in stress mode, it's not going to do maintenance. It's going to do minimal maintenance. So it built up. So I said, they're going to probably put you on statins, right? He goes, yeah, it's exactly what they were going to do. And I
mm,
said, because they don't know what the problem is. The problem for you, I believe 80% of all of the physical issues are psychological based. 20% could be physical. I
mm,
said, but as long as you are in running and you're being chased by a lion, your
mm.
system's not going to say, well, by the way, let's do some maintenance right now. It's
Right.
not.
Yeah.
It's going to keep you running. It's going to keep you in the stress mode, which means maintenance is low. And then people start getting sick and we wonder why.
Yes. Beautiful.
I even had another, I think you'll love this. So a lot of the veterans, they're using THC, right, to treat them. And
Right.
so they said it's the only thing that works. And so what they said was that a lot of these veterans, because they have post-traumatic stress, are not naturally producing the endocannabinoids, right, to chill out
Yeah.
like serotonin. So what I said was, it's amazing they don't understand this. I said, one of the endocannabinoids, anandamide, is the precursor to the release of serotonin, right?
Mm.
So it's the bliss molecule. I said, so why won't the mind naturally produce the bliss molecule? Because they're being shot at.
Exactly. It doesn't
It's
feel
not
safe
going to bliss
enough.
you out.
Exactly.
So it doesn't produce naturally endocannabinoid. But if
Yeah.
you look at THC and anandamide, they have almost the exact chemical same structure. So when the THC hits the bloodstream, it hits the cannabinoid receptors in the
Mm.
brain says, "Oh, release serotonin."
Interesting.
But you could have produced that on your own as
Right.
long as the mind thinks that you're being in danger. At
Mhm.
no point is it going to say chill out. So
Yeah.
that's why it's not producing it, not because there's anything wrong with the brain.
Mm.
Why would the brain want to produce something to chill you out while you're under stress?
Yeah. Beautiful. See, everything makes sense when you look at it the right way.
That's what I hear all the time. I start telling people, like, here's the science of how your mind and your brain work. And they're going, well, this makes a lot of sense. And I go, yeah, doesn't it? Right.
Mm.
But what they're going to do for you is they're going to artificially, right,
Right.
try to chill you out, but
Yeah.
it won't last because you're basically painting over rust.
Which don't you find that stresses people out even more because now they're afraid of the new fix being temporary and not being consistent and not working long term. And now, then what? Then what? And so this future, what if just blast them with more fear, more worry, more doubt, more insecurity. And it just feeds that original pattern.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
But we can just change all of that by calming the nervous system down and then allowing the natural healing to take place. They're
Mm.
going to do it on their own. I
Yeah.
always tell them, I'm not taking any credit for this. This is your own system. I'm just allowing it to get into optimal condition to do what it naturally does. You have just been in fight or flight mode for most of your life.
Exactly. And then, we introduce the new normal. I do find it takes the mind a couple of weeks. People are always looking over their shoulder because the new normal is here. They feel it, but they don't fully believe it yet. So it takes them a little time to recognize, wow, this is here to stay.
I had one guy, this is funny. He was at 9/11 during the
Mm.
bombings, right? So he was there. He was actually, he's a firefighter, so dealt with severe post-traumatic stress. They wanted to just medicate him. He refused. So he was a canine operator. So he trained his dogs to wake him up because he had nightmares constantly. So
Yeah.
they would recognize, I mean, they were so in tune with him, they would recognize it and wake him up from the nightmare. But he
Mhm.
had the same nightmare where the zombies were on the ground. He was floating and
Really?
he was losing altitude and they were jumping up trying to pull him down. So it was that constant nightmare over and over. Take him through the program. And then, like 2 years later, he calls me up and he said, I want to tell you something, but you have to promise you're not going to get mad. And I said, why would I get mad at you? He says, well, I did something. I think you're going to think it's really stupid. Right? I said, what did you do? He says, well, I was always afraid this nightmare would come back and I haven't had the nightmare, but I thought, what if it comes back again? So I
Yeah.
said, so what did you do? He says, well, I started watching zombie movies to
My
see
God.
to see if it would come back. He was so afraid of it, he thought, I'm going to test it and make sure that it's gone.
The mind is a tricky place, and most people that I work with, they will test it. They will wait for it, expect it, and then it usually takes a few weeks, and then they're like, okay, wow, this is really real.
Yeah, we just reset it.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It really is. I love hearing what you're doing. How do you measure? What's your way to measure? You talked about measuring.
Go into a subtle energy research lab, which uses this incredible equipment that was developed in Russia, the GDV device. This throws all the measurements up on a graph, and you can see the energy field and what it looks like before and after, and gives a lot of data. And we have photons of light pouring off of our fingertips. And
Mhm.
the hand is inserted in the device and it measures your energy field that way. It's really beautiful and fascinating.
What's fascinating about people say, well, how could that really work? And I said, did you have, when's the last time you had blood tests? Oh, I had blood tests a week ago. I said, bring them in, compare them against this. They're almost identical. How would this know what a blood test knew, right? If it wasn't the same thing. This is just a different way of measuring it.
And again, the conventional way of thinking is that the blood's going to answer and solve every problem, and it has not really looked at frequencies and energy. And this is the new frontier. And it's not that new, it's ancient, but now there's more and more science that validates what we've known in the spiritual, and different cultures have known for thousands of years. And you look at Chinese medicine, things like acupuncture. I mean, we've known this, but it got thrown into the back of the bus and labeled woo woo and weird when it's actually very, very effective and rapid and safe, and it's here to stay.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. So, no, it's fascinating what you're doing, what we're doing. It sounds very complementary, just different kinds of approaches to it. So, when people come into you and they say they have physical pain, but you
Yeah.
know they really don't. So, I've got a young man that's going to be coming in this week. His doctor has said he has no physical pain that's definitely in his mind. He says he made sure that he has taken care of him that way. What would you do in this kind of a situation where he thinks he needs drugs in order to stop the pain?
Well, if someone says, I feel physical pain, I don't discredit that or shame them, as you
Mhm.
earlier mentioned. There are people who are very, very aware of all their thoughts, and there are other types of people that are very, very aware of their emotions. And then there are people who process everything kinesthetically, they feel everything in their body. They have yet to learn the connection between the mind, the body, and the emotions. So, what I'm able to do is take them through a series of questioning that helps them recognize that the body is able to give a voice to the
Mhm.
thoughts and the emotions that they just never connected the dots to before. And also, even if I just work in the energy field, it will bring up from within the person the thoughts and the emotions that they have either suppressed or repressed for different reasons, and that are connected to the physical symptoms. So again, we don't discredit what the person is experiencing. I just help them connect the dots in a different way through a different approach rather than just trying to suppress a symptom.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what other things can you share with us, or what else would you like, for our audience to know about what you do or how you can help or
Would you like to do a short demonstration session?
sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
I can take everyone through a very short demo that often in a short time, you'll start to feel what I'm talking about when I work in the energy field. So
Okay.
no driving, no operating equipment or machinery. If at all possible, I would love for you to lie down or lean back in your chair and get very, very
Good.
comfortable, and then close your beautiful eyes.
Okay, so let me just get comfortable here. So I'm gonna stay in the chair so you can still
Yeah,
see me, right?
absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Close your beautiful eyes, everyone, and take a deep breath into your low belly. And then open your mouth and let out a big sigh and exaggerate your exhale. And again, relax your low belly. Breathe first into your low belly and then draw the breath up into your heart and open your mouth and exaggerate your exhale with a sigh. And one more time, a deep belly breath in and up, and a long, slow exhale. Now, as you return to normal nose breathing, just easy, effortless, in and out through your nose. And as you listen to the sound of my voice, I want you to remember to let me do all the work. Do not try to help me. Do not use any techniques that you know. Do not try to clear your mind. Just begin to observe and notice what's coming up in your body and around your body and coming up into your mind. You may begin to notice thoughts, memories flashing across your mind. Just let it be there. You may begin to notice emotions coming up. Remember, it's just energy, and this method is designed to bring up and move out any disturbances that are clouding over your natural state. So allow any emotions that start to bubble up, just let them come up. Even if you begin to notice physical pain coming up, do your best to just relax, let the sensation come up. It's just energy coming up and moving out. You will not get more than you can handle. It's nothing to fear and nothing to fix or to figure out with your mind. Just become aware, observe, without the need to change or control anything or stop anything or figure it out with your mind. You may begin to notice that even with your eyes closed, you start to see something like colors or lights or shapes or images. Just observe that, and I'll talk about that later. You might begin to notice some kind of sound, voices, words, music, tones. It might seem like it's coming from inside you or around you. Just listen and I'll explain later what's going on here. You might notice a fragrance. You may notice pressure in your head. This is a very common sign that you're feeling the frequencies that I'm bringing in for you. Do your best to just allow whatever is showing up. You might notice your body moving. Let your body move. It might move involuntarily, or you might feel like you want to move. Let your body be free to move in any way it wants to go. Some people move the entire time, and some people don't move an eyelash. There's no right or wrong. You will not do it wrong. And whatever you're having, whatever experience is happening right now, is perfect for you today. Remember, you're safe. You won't get more than you can handle, and you're in control. You could stop at any time if you wanted to. If it gets really quiet inside you, and if it seems like nothing's happening, that's okay too. Sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen. So just keep observing and allowing whatever is happening to be there. And we're going to take one more minute in complete silence. I'll be right here continuing to work on your field, but I'll be silent. And when I'm finished, you'll hear my voice and we'll come back and talk again a little bit later. Here we go into the quiet. Enjoy. Now, very, very slowly become aware of the sound of my voice and all the sounds around you. And slowly begin to deepen your breathing and feel yourself becoming more alert, more awake, more aware, and staying very, very relaxed. Take a deep, long breath in and out now. Feel yourself becoming more alert, more aware, more awake. And one more time, a deep breath in and out. And come all the way back, wide awake, alert, refreshed and relaxed. And slowly, gently open your beautiful eyes and come all the way back now. All right, we didn't lose the host.
Oh, very good. That would have been bad if I was just falling down.
It's happened almost once, almost once.
I've had people fall asleep. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah, the ideal state is being in that theta state where you're very aware and you're relaxed at the same time. And that's what happens. Most people, even people who have never meditated, will drop into theta within sometimes 20 seconds and feel conscious, but so relaxed. And this is where, as you know, self-healing kicks in. And our creativity, our productivity, our ideas, our connection to the divine shows up. And it's a beautiful experience. So even from a short demo, I do want to say to our listeners that the next 24 hours can get very interesting. More often happens after than during the session. And if there are things you need to detox and purge, they may come up. And so if you start noticing the symptoms you've been trying to get rid of flaring up, or you have a literal physical detox, just know this is what's moving it out. And it will show up usually within 24 hours. And then at 48 hours, you'll notice feeling different and much, much better. So don't be alarmed. We forget that, like food poisoning, with real healing, the poison comes up and gets out. We don't suppress it. We don't push it down deeper. We bring it up and move it out. And that's what this is designed to do for you. And that pressure in the head, I'm curious, Don, did you notice pressure in the head?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as people feel the frequencies, it will feel often like a headache or pressure in the head. So once I do this once for someone, if you've been listening, you might have spontaneous another wave of healing kick in. It could be tonight or tomorrow. We see typically a 3-day window. So if you get that pressure in the head out of seemingly nowhere, lie down again. Let it just wash over you and let yourself experience more of this. You're getting another round of healing, the 2-for-1 special.
That's right. The thing I did notice was interesting is I found myself up above observing.
Yes.
Yeah. As opposed to being in the
Yeah.
situation, I was above it watching it.
Well, so many people will have that experience because you already know you're not your body. You were able to observe what was happening because you're a field of consciousness. And so some people easily go into that state. Other people, especially those with trauma, who have disassociated from the body because they didn't feel safe, they will come into the body for the first time many times and say, "Oh my God, Deborah, I actually felt like I was more myself than ever before, and I felt safe in my body."
Right.
So it can have different effects for different people.
Yeah. That was excellent. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
everybody got a lot out of that. So very good. I've enjoyed the time. I'm sure there's lots of things we probably end up connecting on in other ways as well. So I definitely get what your work is and what you're doing. And congratulations on all the people you're helping.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally resonate with you, every word out of your mouth and what you're doing. And yeah, it's a delight. It really is. Thank you for having me.
So if somebody wants to get a hold of you or how do they do that? And we'll put stuff in the notes as well, I'm sure. So
Yeah, go to internationalcpi.com and you can find a digital free copy of my book and several other free gifts and the services that are offered. And feel free to reach out. We answer every email. So internationalcpi.com, you'll find everything there.
and CPI stands for Chronic Pain Institute, right?
Correct. Yes.
Beautiful. Very good. Well, thank you again, Deborah, and thank you everybody for listening in to another episode of You Must Be Out of Your Mind. And there it is.
That's a wrap.